Hi everyone, Chelsea from Chelsea Buns Cross Stitch here. So today we're going to do a tutorial on how to do a really cute hoop butt. I've seen a lot of tutorials in the past. I've also tried stitching my own and it just never turns out to look as cute as I want it to. So the fabric you see on the left here is the fabric I've chosen for the inner insert, and I'm just opening up a package of trim in some really cute yellow colors that I'm going to use to kind of accent the final project. There's a few options on this loom, and you can get these trim packs anywhere. They're really cost effective. So between the cotton fabric and the trim, I'm going to get started. So the first thing is I have my pattern or my stitched piece in this hoop really tight. I've pulled it to be exactly how I want it to be when it's framed. The first thing I have to do is get rid of all this excess material, which sometimes seems terrifying. So I guess my first suggestion is just to make sure that you have your pattern in the hoop exactly as you want it and as tight as you want it before moving on to this step. And then I'm just going to cut all of the excess fabric off so that I can, when I'm finished, be left with a really neat final result. So I'm just gonna, you can see I'm just cutting with a pair of fabric shears all the way around the outside. I think I probably left about an inch. I didn't measure it, but essentially all you wanted to do is cover the inside once you've stuck it down. So I don't want to see the inner hoop, and I want it to be as even and uniform as possible so it doesn't look messy. So there we go. I've taken all the excess fabric off. I'm going to trim a couple other pieces here just to make sure that it's even. The only other thing I would suggest is to make sure that your hoop is tight. So spin, I don't know where I do it in this video, but spin the top screw just to make sure that your fabric is in tight. So now I'm just kind of testing to see how much fabric I left and if I think it's going to be too much. But in this case, I think it's fine, but I'm kind of just taking a look to see if there's going to be too much bulk left once I actually start to stick this down. So that looks good, and I think we're ready to go. So luckily I had a second hoop, the same as the one I have framed my piece in, or I want to frame my piece in. But if you don't, that's fine. Just use the hoop, the one hoop that you have. All I'm going to do now is take a piece of cardboard or cardstock. In this case, I'm just using an envelope that I shipped my patterns in. It's relatively firm, and I'm going to trace the inside of the inside hoop to get the right size for my inside cotton insert with the fabric that you see on the left. So I just took a little Sharpie and I ran it around the inside of the pink plastic hoop. And now with a regular pair of scissors, not your fabric shears, I'm just going to cut this out. So in this case, I'm cutting around the outer edge, but I will get onto the line. And if anything, my suggestion to you, because for this piece I did it a little big, so if I went back and did it again, I would do it a little bit smaller. So when you're cutting, you want to cut slightly inside the black line so that once you put your fabric on, it's going to slip into the outer hoop more easily. And you'll see this a little bit later in the video. So now I'm just going to cut. I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you don't have to watch the whole thing, and then we'll go from there. So now that that's done, we're just going to do a quick test fit. And as you can see, and as I mentioned earlier, I cut it a little bit right on the line. So I obviously need to make it a little bit smaller so it fits inside that inner pink hoop. You also have to take into consideration the fact that the green Ada in this case is going to be folded over on the inside hoop. So this is why you want this piece of cardboard so much smaller. So that looks good. I think I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to move on to the process of covering this white cardstock piece with the cotton fabric that I chose. Before I do anything else, I needed to heat press it or iron it. So just give that cotton a nice heat press or iron so that when you attach it to the cardboard backing, it's not wrinkly and obviously you can't do anything about it. So now I have my ironed piece of cotton and my cut out piece of cardstock in a circle that fits inside that pink frame. So now we're ready to go and install the cotton on this circle. One thing to note when you're doing this is that in my case, it was a cardboard envelope. So there's a white face and then there's a craft side face. So just keep in mind that the color you choose when you stick this down is what's going to be showing through the front of the hoop. So I wanted something that didn't look too obvious, so I chose the craft side. You'll see that in a second. Right now all I'm doing is tracing a circle in the cotton with pencil, just so I have an easy guide to cut out my fabric. It doesn't need to be perfect. You want to leave about an inch on all sides. And now I'm just going to use some fabric shears to trim this out. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and attach that cotton to that piece. Here's where I'm kind of debating on which side I want showing through the front of the fabric. I just thought the white would show through too much, so I chose the craft side. This might not be an issue depending on the type of material you choose as your cardstock or whatever. And even if it was white, it probably wouldn't make a big difference, so don't worry too much about it. Now, I highly suggest using archival double-sided tape for this. But in my case, I didn't have any archival double-sided tape laying around. So this is actually fashion tape that you would use to, keep your blouse from opening in inconvenient spots. This worked just fine, and I'm not necessarily super concerned about the archival quality of this project, because if the person who's receiving this is alive 500 years from now, well, that's a whole other problem. So use what you can. In my case, I just needed to get this done, so fashion tape it was, but archival double-sided tape is definitely the best. So all I'm doing here is I just put a few strips on the center of the cardstock circle. All I want to make sure in this case is that the cotton, it adheres to the front of this cardstock, just to make sure that when I go to install it later, there's not too many bulges and stuff. I didn't do a perfect job at this. It doesn't really matter as long as the cotton stays down. That's really what you want, is just so that it doesn't move on you. So now I'm going to take this, flip it over, and stick it onto my cotton cutout circle. And that's the first part of how we're going to install that cotton. So I'm just taking a second here to just press it down and make sure that everything sticks appropriately. And then I'm going to move on to cutting slits all the way around this circle to make sure that it lays evenly. So if I was to attempt to just put this cotton down without doing these snips, it would be uneven and really bulky, and that's not really the look that I'm going for. So the slits allow me to put the fabric down in a way such that it's flatter, neater, and when the circle's finished, it'll look really clean. Now that that's done and I have my slits cut all the way on the outside of that circle, I'm ready to go and can lay it down. So I'm going to install some adhesive tape all the way around the outside of the cardboard square, just like that. Then I'm going to take the inner liner off so that it's ready for me to pin the fabric down, and we can go from there. I'm just going to take this last piece off and we'll be ready. I'm just going to spin this so you can see the adhesive archival, or non-archival tape in my case, but you can see the adhesive is ready to go. So now I'm just going to start laying my fabric down. I'm going to pull tight on everything that I do here because I want the edges to be really clean. And as I go, I'm going to overlap each section of cotton a little bit with the last one that I laid down. So like I said, you're going for a really clean look here, and you want the fabric to be tight all along the front. So be as cautious as possible and take your time so you get a super even result. The end is always the trickiest just because you have a couple of overlapping pieces of fabric. So in this case, what I'm going to do is take a little piece of the adhesive tape and put it on top of both the left and right sections just to make sure I get good adherence and so that that final piece doesn't pop up unnecessarily. So I'm just gonna, I think right now I'm just trimming off some extra fabric and make sure everything lays really flat, and then I'm gonna stick this extra piece right over the last two sections that I did, pull off the back coating and then stick down the last piece so that it's even. And voila, one final cotton covered insert piece of cardstock that's going to make the back of our hoop look really finished and really very cute. You can use any cotton, something that complements the pattern. I loved this piece of cotton to go with this chart and the colors used in the chart. So that's it for this part. Now, just before I do anything else, I want to do a quick test fit. In this case, my piece fits, but it could be smaller because, like I said, that Ada is going to have to go in. So, and I can see by the fact I had to use a pencil to get it out, but it was too late. I wasn't redoing it, so whatever, I made it work. But just make sure that you get a really nice fit. You want it to be tight, but not too tight. So now, just like we did when we just did our cotton insert, I want the same effect for when I'm tucking this Ada in around this hoop for its final permanent resting place. So I'm going to go all around the outside of the green Ada and cut slits in it just like I did the cotton. So now all our slits are done all the way around the outside and we're ready to start actually installing that Ada so that it doesn't move and that you're able to finish the hoop as cleanly as you'd like to make it super cute, as the title suggests. So what I'm going to do next is take the adhesive tape, and I'm going to at first I used 2, which you can see right here, but that was too wide. So what I actually ended up doing was cutting right down the middle, which is going to save me a bunch of tape first of all, and it's going to be enough. It's going to be enough for the Ada to stick to. So I'm going to cut my adhesive strip in half, which is the perfect width for this hoop, and then I'm going to install it all the way around the inside of the hoop. So all the vinyl backing is now removed off of the adhesive tape, so I can go ahead and start positioning and pinning down my Ada. In this particular situation, I decided to start from the top. You could probably start anywhere. To be honest with you, the back looked really consistent and you're not going to see most of it when it's finished anyways, but I started at the top just because it seemed like a natural fit. So I'm going to go around just like I did the cotton circle. It's a little bit different because the shape of this is different, but the concept is the same. I'm going to go all the way around the outside of my hoop, overlapping each piece of Ada with the last, and sticking the rest of it to the adhesive tape to make as clean an edge as possible. And ideally, you don't want any ripples, so just pull the fabric as tight as possible. When you cut those slits into the fabric, you don't want to cut all the way down. You want to leave it intact so that when you fold it over, you don't see the cuts on the part that I'm grabbing right now. You don't see the cuts on the top. So just be aware of that. So continue around the entire hoop until you're finished, and then you'll be good to go. Now, just to make sure that everything's tight and really adheres well to that tape, all I'm doing is a final roundabout on the entire inner circle of that hoop to make sure that the fabric is sitting tightly. And this is the end result. And honestly, I think it looks pretty awesome. It's way better than any of the stitched ones that I've ever done. They don't turn out even. Some people are so talented at that, but I'm just not that person. So now that that's all done, we are going to take that cotton insert and install it on the back of our really cute, clean back of our hoop, because I don't know about you, but I don't like that. Doesn't look too bad. And not that everybody's turning hoops around on walls, but I like it to look super cute on both sides. So part of the reason we did this cotton insert is to cover the overlapping Aida that's sitting on the back of the front pattern. So this is a great example of where I said make your insert a little bit smaller. It could have been a little bit smaller than mine. I forced this one to work, but I think it would have turned out just a little bit better if it was a smidgen smaller. So in this case, I'm literally just carefully going around and pushing that cardstock in and making sure that it's tightly connected on each, on every single side of this hoop. So just push it in. You want obviously the full cotton side facing up, and this is what it looks like when it's done. So I'm already pretty thrilled with the way that this is turning out. I think it looks super clean, it's super simple. If anybody turned that hoop around, I think it's a really pretty result. But I wanted to go one step further, and I love this trim that I mentioned earlier. I especially like the pom-poms because I think they're a really unique look, kind of vintage. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I really, really like the look. So I'm going to use this kind of pom-pom trim around the inside, and this is just going to cover up the slits that we did earlier. So like I said, it looks super neat, but it's just going to give it one more finishing touch that I think will really give the back of this hoop a little pop. All I'm doing right now is a sort of a test fit. So I cut off a piece that was definitely longer, and now I'm just going to do a test fit to make sure I have exactly the length of pom-pom trim that I need to go on the inside. Once I've made sure that I have enough trim, that it's definitely longer and that I didn't shortchange myself, I'm going to use the same adhesive tape. You just saw me peel off the vinyl backing. I'm going to stick it to the top in the same place I started the Aida. All I was doing here is just making sure that the pom-pom trim was going to adhere to that adhesive, and it worked perfectly. I couldn't have been more thrilled. No glue. It was so amazing. I was stoked. So all I'm going to do is run a half width of this. So the last time I cut the adhesive tape in half, it's the same thing again because it's the same hoop. I'm going to run that adhesive tape all around the inside on top of that green Aida, and then I'm going to stick the pom-pom trim down. As I get to the end here, one thing I want to be really conscious of is how the end fits together. So I was just very particular with how I cut this and making sure that I would be able to snug that little last pom-pom right in between the two so that there was no disconnect. So if it looks short, you could remedy that, but it's nice when it's all one piece. So I just took my time, made sure that I had enough trim and that it would go together so it looks uniform all the way around. And there you have it. Now I'm just doing another run around the inside, make sure it sticks down just like the last time, and then we can go from there. Now, I wasn't exactly finished just yet. I wanted a little accent on the front, ideally to cover up the screw a little bit, and then I wanted a unique way to hang it. So I used the same trim pack where the pom-pom trim came from and grabbed a little piece of twine. Right now I'm attaching the polka dot yellow bow to the hoop with the twine. And then I'm just going to tie a knot in the top of the twine that will be adjustable. So if the recipient of this gift wants to change the height of how it's hung, they can totally do that. So there's the cute little finishing touch bow tied on with the twine. And then you'll see me make a little knot in the top of the twine, and I think this project's finished. So there you go, guys. My little cute hoop butt tutorial. I'm going to do a quick close-up here just so you can see the finished result on the front and the back. Unfortunately, this chart isn't available for purchase. Sorry about that, but I really hope that this tutorial helped you guys out today. Hit subscribe and leave me a comment if this was helpful to you. I really would love to see some finished projects too, so never be afraid to shoot me a DM or an email showing off your pictures. Okay, guys, hope you loved it. Talk soon. Bye.